My name is Calla Whitmore. When I was 8 years old, my parents dropped me off at my grandmother's house and never came back. For 10 years, I waited. For a call, a letter, a reason. But all I got was silence. Grandma Odette raised me with patience and principle, turning my broken childhood into something strong and steady. And just when I thought I'd buried the past, they returned, waltzing into my grandmother's funeral with their fake tears and greedy eyes. Not for me, for her fortune, $47 million. That's what brought them back. They thought I'd be the same little girl they abandoned. But they had no idea who I'd become. I remember the day like it was burned into my skin. The air smelled like pine needles and gasoline. My mom was driving. Dad sat silent, staring out the window like I wasn't even there. I clutched my stuffed fox too tight. We pulled into Grandma Odette's driveway, a modest house with overflowing flower boxes. I thought it was just a visit. That's what Mom said. Just for a few days while we figure things out. Her voice was careful, her smile too thin. She didn't get out of the car. Dad didn't say goodbye. I stepped out with my tiny backpack. Grandma was already on the porch. I ran to her. She hugged me tight, lavender and old books, but I barely noticed. The car was backing up. I chased it. I screamed. They didn't stop. They didn't even look back. I waited for them. Every day. By the window. I made up excuses. They were lost. They needed more time. I believed it because the truth, that they didn't want me, was too much. Grandma tried. She made cinnamon toast, read me stories, hummed lullabies. But I still cried at night, whispering, "Was I not good enough?" She never let that question sit. "Some people aren't built for love that takes effort," she told me. Over time, I stopped asking, but I noticed. Other kids had parents at school plays. Mine didn't send a single birthday card. Still, Odette? She was solid, strong. She didn't just take me in. She showed up every day. She worked as a school principal, clipped coupons, drove a noisy sedan. She never bragged about money. I'd only learn later she had more than most people dreamed of. But none of that changed who she was. She taught me to hold my head up, even when I felt like disappearing. "Knowledge is power, Calla," she always said. "And you're stronger than you think." She was right. Grandma Odette didn't talk about feelings the way other adults did. She didn't lecture or sugarcoat anything. She showed love in packed lunches, in staying up late to check my homework, in brushing my hair when I cried but didn't want to talk. Her love was quiet, but it was always there. She taught me more than I realized. How to speak clearly, how to walk into a room like I belonged, how to hold back anger until it served me. "Never waste your truth on people who aren't listening," she'd say. We had rituals, crosswords on Sundays, library visits on Fridays, and French press coffee mornings where she sipped while reading the Wall Street Journal. At 10, I thought all kids had Roth IRAs and knew what compound interest meant. She made learning feel like freedom. I loved science, so she gave me textbooks I barely understood and let me fail my way forward. She turned the attic into a planetarium when I got obsessed with stars. When I said I wanted to be a physicist, she nodded like I'd said I wanted pancakes. No surprise, just belief. And though she lived simply, couponing, driving that rattling car, she made moves behind the scenes. I just didn't know yet. At 16, she took me to Boston for the weekend. "A woman should know how to move alone in the world," she told me, handing me a subway map, "and still feel like she belongs." She taught me how to speak up without shouting, how to sew on buttons and write a sharp letter to the school board. She was equal parts old school and visionary. I didn't know anyone else like her. On my 18th birthday, she rented out the back room of her favorite Italian place. Not a big party, just close friends and a few of her colleagues. Quiet laughter, warm lights, lasagna, and red checkered tablecloths. After everyone left, she handed me a navy velvet box. Inside was a gold necklace with a tiny key charm. "It's beautiful," I said, rubbing my thumb over the tiny grooves. "It's more than that," she said. "One day you'll know what it's for." I asked her again, and she only smiled. A woman should always carry her own keys. 3 months later, I got the call. It came just after a midterm. Unknown number. I almost didn't pick up. Miss Whitmore? A voice said. This is St. Agnes Hospital. It's about your grandmother. I barely made it to a bench before my knees gave out. Massive heart attack. She didn't make it. For days I moved through fog. I didn't believe it. Couldn't. The silence in her house screamed louder than anything else. I found her cardigan in the laundry and broke down on the floor. The funeral was small, dignified. Former students and neighbors filled the pews, telling stories about how she changed their lives. I sat in the front row, holding the key at my chest like it could anchor me. And just when I thought I could breathe again, I felt the air shift. I turned. They were there. Delilah and Monroe Whitmore, my parents. They looked around the church like tourists walking into a museum, like they were measuring the room, not mourning. And I knew. They didn't come for her. They came for what she left behind. Grandma Odette didn't talk about feelings the way other adults did. She didn't lecture or sugarcoat anything. She showed love in packed lunches, in staying up late to check my homework, in brushing my hair when I cried but didn't want to talk. Her love was quiet, but it was always there. She taught me more than I realized. How to speak clearly, how to walk into a room like I belonged, how to hold back anger until it served me. Never waste your truth on people who aren't listening, she'd say. We had rituals, crosswords on Sundays, library visits on Fridays, and French press coffee mornings where she sipped while reading the Wall Street Journal. At 10, I thought all kids had Roth IRAs and knew what compound interest meant. She made learning feel like freedom. I loved science, so she gave me textbooks I barely understood and let me fail my way forward. She turned the attic into a planetarium when I got obsessed with stars. When I said I wanted to be a physicist, she nodded like I'd said I wanted pancakes. No surprise, just belief. And though she lived simply, couponing, driving that rattling car, she made moves behind the scenes. I just didn't know yet. At 16, she took me to Boston for the weekend. A woman should know how to move alone in the world, she told me, handing me a subway map, and still feel like she belongs. She taught me how to speak up without shouting, how to sew on buttons and write a sharp letter to the school board. She was equal parts old school and visionary. I didn't know anyone else like her. On my 18th birthday, she rented out the back room of her favorite Italian place. Not a big party, just close friends and a few of her colleagues. Quiet laughter, warm lights, lasagna, and red checkered tablecloths. After everyone left, she handed me a navy velvet box. Inside was a gold necklace with a tiny key charm. It's beautiful, I said, rubbing my thumb over the tiny grooves. It's more than that, she said. One day you'll know what it's for. I asked her again, and she only smiled. A woman should always carry her own keys. 3 months later, I got the call. It came just after a midterm. Unknown number. I almost didn't pick up. Miss Whitmore? A voice said. This is St. Agnes Hospital. It's about your grandmother. I barely made it to a bench before my knees gave out. Massive heart attack. She didn't make it. For days I moved through fog. I didn't believe it. Couldn't. The silence in her house screamed louder than anything else. I found her cardigan in the laundry and broke down on the floor. The funeral was small, dignified. Former students and neighbors filled the pews, telling stories about how she changed their lives. I sat in the front row, holding the key at my chest like it could anchor me, and just when I thought I could breathe again, I felt the air shift. I turned. They were there. Delilah and Monroe Whitmore, my parents. They looked around the church like tourists walking into a museum, like they were measuring the room, not mourning. And I knew. They didn't come for her. They came for what she left behind. I hadn't seen them in 10 years, but the second they walked into the church, I knew. Delilah and Monroe Whitmore, my parents, dressed in black, their faces carefully arranged into masks of sorrow. But their eyes scanned the room like they were calculating interest. They didn't come to grieve. They came to claim. I didn't stand. I didn't speak. I just watched as they moved toward me, like ghosts with unfinished business. Calla, my mother said softly, like she still had the right to use my name. I stayed silent. We came as soon as we heard, Monroe added, like his absence all those years had never mattered. You shouldn't have, I said. Delilah's smile tightened. You're still a minor, Calla, and now that your grandmother is gone, we'll take you home. I'm 18, I replied, and I'm not going anywhere with either of you. Her mouth twitched. You're being difficult. We're your legal guardians. No, you're not. The voice came from behind them, smooth, controlled. A man in a tailored gray suit stepped forward, briefcase in hand, mid-50s, calm, eyes sharp. Thorne Bellamy, he said, nodding to me, estate attorney for the late Odette Whitmore. My parents turned, startled. There are legal matters to address, Thorne said. Let's speak privately. The side office of the church became a courtroom. Thorne took the head seat. I sat beside him, my parents across the table, already bristling. Miss Whitmore, Thorne said, may I see your necklace? I unclasped the key and handed it over. He placed it gently on the table, then opened a folder. This key confirms her identity as Odette Whitmore's sole beneficiary. Per the will, Calla inherits the entire estate, valued at approximately $47.6 million. Delilah stood. That's absurd. Odette didn't have that kind of money. She did, Thorne replied. She kept it quiet, unlike some. Monroe leaned forward. She was manipulated. She wasn't in her right mind. She passed 3 mental competency evaluations, all on record, Thorne said calmly. Delilah hissed. We are her children. And yet, I said, you left her, just like you left me. Thorne slid another document across the table. 10 years ago, you signed legal abandonment papers. You never responded to court summons. Full custody was granted to Odette. You've had no legal claim to Calla since. They looked at the paper like it might bite. And as of today, Thorne continued, Calla Whitmore is fully emancipated and sole controller of the estate. Monroe gritted his teeth. You expect us to walk away? You already did, I said. They turned to me, suddenly desperate. You don't understand, Delilah whispered. We just want what's fair. Fair? I laughed. You think any of this is yours? Silence. Thorne cleared his throat. Odette also requested Miss Whitmore be given a private letter. No copies, no interference. He handed me the envelope. My name was written in her hand. Elegant, sure. I didn't speak. I stood up, clutching the letter. They watched me go, but they didn't follow. They couldn't, and they never would again. Thorne adjusted his cufflinks, then opened the thick envelope in front of him. The air in the room changed. Even my parents, for all their arrogance, could feel it. This is the formal reading of the last will and testament of Odette Marianne Whitmore, Thorne began. The following distributions and legal instructions are to be carried out with immediate effect. He glanced at me and offered the faintest nod. I braced myself. To my beloved granddaughter, Calla Rowan Whitmore, I leave my entire estate. This includes all business assets, intellectual properties, domestic and international investments, real estate, and account holdings, valued at approximately $47.6 million. There was a moment of silence so absolute, it rang in my ears. And then, You can't be serious, Delilah snapped. This is a joke, Monroe growled, lunging forward. She was manipulated. She was old, not in her right mind. Thorne raised a hand like a judge in court. Odette was of sound mind. There are multiple psychological evaluations on file to verify her competency. You're welcome to review them. She was our mother, Delilah cried. She had no right to cut us out. She had every right, I said, my voice low. You gave her no reason not to. Monroe glared at me like I'd spat in his face. You're just a kid. Wrong, I said. I'm exactly the person Grandma raised me to be, and she didn't raise me to fold. Thorne cleared his throat again. There's more. My parents fell silent, barely breathing. Odette was aware of the likely response to her decisions, he said, which is why she added the following legal provisions. He slid another document across the table. This is a permanent restraining order, pre-authorized and held in abeyance. Any attempt to harass, threaten, coerce, or pressure Miss Whitmore in relation to her inheritance will result in immediate enforcement. You will be barred from contacting her. Violation will lead to criminal charges. Delilah's lip curled in disgust. She's just trying to erase us. She didn't need to, I said. You did that yourselves. Thorne leaned back. Odette anticipated this reaction, which is why she also requested Miss Whitmore be granted full legal emancipation effective immediately. You can't just rewrite the rules, Monroe spat. You did, I said. 10 years ago when you gave up your rights, remember? Their silence was answer enough. And finally, Thorne continued, his voice gentler now, Odette left something personal, a sealed letter, to be opened only by Calla in private. He reached into the briefcase one last time and handed me the envelope. My name was written across it in her familiar cursive, the loops and slants that had once helped me learn to write my own name. The sight of it made my throat tighten. I'll leave you alone with it, Thorne said, rising from his chair. Take your time. I nodded, barely able to speak. He left the room without another word, closing the door behind him. I sat there with the envelope in my lap. Across the room, my parents still hadn't moved. They looked stunned, cornered, but I wasn't afraid of them anymore. Without a word, I stood. I walked to the door. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't need to. They had already walked out of my life once. They weren't going to get the chance to do it again. I stepped into the empty church and sat in the same front pew where I'd clutched her necklace during the service. The smell of lilies lingered in the air. My hands shook as I opened the envelope. Her handwriting danced across the page like she was still here, telling me a story I hadn't heard yet. My dearest Calla, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. And if I know your parents, and I do, they've already shown up pretending to care. I wish I could protect you from them one last time. But instead, I'll leave you the truth. I kept reading, and with each word, the weight of 10 years shifted. She told me what really happened, that my parents hadn't just left me. They had tried to take everything from her. Years ago, while she was away on a business trip, they tried to transfer all of her assets, illegally. They thought she was too old, too soft to notice. They underestimated her. She gave them a choice: leave with nothing and walk away quietly, or stay and face legal action. They chose to vanish, leaving behind the daughter they never truly wanted, and she chose to raise me in peace. I gripped the letter as the tears came, slow but steady. All those years I thought I wasn't enough. All that shame I carried. It was never mine to hold. She ended the letter the way she always ended our bedtime stories. You are stronger than you know. You are a Whitmore woman, and Whitmore women do not bend. All my love, always. Grandma. I folded the letter and tucked it back into the envelope. I sat there, breathing, letting the truth settle. They came for money. I came out with a legacy. 3 months passed. 3 long months where I tried to live quietly, to grieve, to find a rhythm in this strange new life. But grief has a way of curling into your lungs. And my parents, well, they had a way of not letting things go. At first, they sent letters, lawyers challenging the will, claiming duress, contesting her mental state. All of them were dismissed. Grandma had anticipated every argument. Every document was watertight, countersigned, witnessed, verified. There were no cracks to exploit. When the legal path failed, they pivoted to character. They called me entitled, ungrateful, said I was too young to manage the money, too emotional, too naive. But every time they spoke, they only revealed what Grandma already knew. They weren't grieving a mother. They were mourning the money they never got to control. Then came the final act of desperation. It was a Thursday morning when my assistant at Montgomery Investments buzzed my office. There are 2 people downstairs demanding to speak with you. They say they're your parents. I didn't ask her to clarify. I already knew. I'll come down, I said. I stood in front of the mirror in my office, straightened the collar of my navy blazer, one of Grandma's old ones, tailored to fit me perfectly. I adjusted the key around my neck, took one breath, then another, and I walked. The elevator doors opened to the marble-tiled lobby. They spotted me immediately. Delilah stormed forward first, lips drawn tight, hair pulled back too sharply. "You can't keep us out!" she hissed. "This is our family's company," Monroe added, his voice heavy with old entitlement. No, I said, stepping fully into the space. It's mine, and it hasn't been yours for a long time. Delilah let out a bitter laugh. We raised you. You wouldn't be anything without us. I stared at her. You didn't raise me. Odette did. All you did was abandon me. Her face twitched. You can't erase us, she snapped. We're your parents. No, I said again, voice flat. You're strangers, and legally, you are nothing. She stepped closer, lowering her voice into something sickly sweet. We still have time to make this right, Calla. We're a family. Let us help you. I tilted my head. Help me? Her smile faltered. You think I need help? I asked. You think I've spent the last 10 years waiting for you to show up so I could hand you a check? Monroe crossed his arms, eyes narrowing. You don't know what you're doing with that kind of money. I know exactly what I'm doing, I said. And I know exactly what you're doing. Delilah's voice turned hard again. If you won't let us in, we'll go public. The media will eat this up. An 18-year-old girl stealing her parents' rightful inheritance. I took one step forward. Do it. She blinked. What? Tell them everything, I said. Tell them how you abandoned an 8-year-old girl. Tell them how you tried to rob your own mother blind. Tell them how you disappeared for a decade, then only came back when she died. Please, tell the world. I'd love to see how that headline plays out. Monroe looked like he'd been slapped. Go ahead, I added. Tell the story. I dare you. The lobby fell into silence. Even the receptionist had stopped pretending not to listen. And in that silence, they realized it. They had no power here, not over the company, not over the story, not over me. You'll regret this, Delilah whispered, venom behind every word. No, I said, meeting her gaze without blinking. I won't. I turned to the security guard. Please show them the door. They didn't argue. They didn't fight. They left. And this time, it was for good. I returned to my office and stood by the window for a long time, watching the street below. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting anymore. I wasn't hoping. I wasn't afraid. They were gone and I was free. A week after the confrontation, I sat in Grandma's old office, my office now. The room still smelled faintly of her perfume and cedar wood. Everything was the same, down to the framed diploma on the wall and the faded leather chair she refused to replace. Thorne Bellamy sat across from me, laptop open, a faint smile playing on his lips. Ready? He asked. I nodded. He clicked play. The screen filled with her face, Odette, alive, strong, and composed in a navy blouse and pearls. Her eyes sparkled the way they always did when she was up to something. Hello, Calla, she said, smiling softly. If you're watching this, then everything has unfolded just as I expected. And I know you. You handled it with grace, didn't you? My throat tightened. You know by now that I didn't leave you just money. I left you something bigger, a mission. The screen shifted to photos. Children laughing in shelters, smiling as they received books, backpacks, care. I started the Whitmore Foundation years ago, quietly. It's fully funded. And it's yours now. You'll decide how many lives we change. Not because I didn't trust the world, but because I trusted you. Tears rolled down my cheeks, but I didn't blink. Use our name to lift people, Calla. That's what strength really is. The video ended, and I understood. I wasn't just her heir, I was her legacy.